Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all of your sports books and track all of your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You can also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as they're the best account on the platform. Head to the App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire to download the app.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the co-host. I like to say co-host because it's that time of the week. It's Friday. It's the closing bell with Ron Marmalefsky of Ron A Sports, where we get to talk NCAA and NFL more from a data and analytical standpoint. Decades and decades and decades of information, and we're blessed and honored to have Ron here for our second season of talks, and it's been a privilege. And it's November next week, so the time is flying, but look forward to week 8 in the NFL already. Shout out to Prize, our new sponsor and partnership with WagerWire. If you have not downloaded the app, please go to Google Play and where you download your apps. It's free. Start tracking your bets. Take a look at your ROI. Take a look at all the options down below at Sportsbook, free plays, and such and such. We'll be doing a lot more work starting next week and the rest of 2023 and beyond. And lastly, to the gentleman behind the glass, Joseph Shea, Evan Lewis, Olu Bennett, and of course, Kate Horton. Welcome, and we can't thank you enough. So without further ado, let's bring in the true star of this show, the one and only Mr. Ron Marmalefsky.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Ron.
Yep, everything's good on this end. Almost halfway through the NFL season, more than halfway through the college season. As they say on late night TV, not tired yet. So still happy to be crunching the numbers.
Shout out and a good afternoon to good friend of this show, and I know a friend of yours, Mr. Russell Saylor. Welcome. It's Friday, Russ. Tough beat last Sunday for your Colts. Didn't expect a total of 60 points scored there for sure, but tough battle there, but looking for a bounce back there. Let's go right to college. Last weekend, what'd your eyes see and what'd your numbers see?
Well, another strong weekend. I enjoyed the weekend greatly. I kind of stayed away as we talked from a lot of the marquee games. I'm thinking, what exactly were the marquee games last week? And I kind of didn't have them. I was fascinated by the fact that USC lost again. I'm trying to think of the Tennessee-Alabama game. Tennessee up at the half, and then Alabama comes back. I think Tennessee feels pretty sick about that particular one. They had that game, that sometimes teams probably wish that they don't go to halftime. They don't go in the locker room to lose that momentum, because I think if Tennessee could have just stayed on the field and they just could have continued playing, they were doing just fine. But third quarter and fourth quarter kind of imploded on them. You can never sweep on Alabama. That was the danger in that game.
The marquee game of the weekend was Ohio State, Penn State. I don't play the ref game. I don't usually get involved in that drama, but there was a very pivotal pivotal, uh, picked up fumble, ran back 65 yards, which would have put Penn State up 7 at the time. The phantom flag came from somewhere. I have no idea. Well after the play, well after he scored, Ohio State gets the ball back, eventually gets a touchdown, and goes on to win that game. I'll just say this to you, Ron. If that flag doesn't get thrown, I think we're talking about different records for Penn State and Ohio State tonight.
That would have been the game changer that Ohio State typically pulls on Penn State. So the other way around, for Penn State to actually have a sudden change would have absolutely been, possibly the sealing the game, because both defenses were very tough to move on. These are two really, really good defenses. It brought to mind to me, what did we have? And I was lucky to escape most of this. About 5 game-changing plays by other than the teams itself. I saw the play where I saw in review the play where Pittsburgh got the first down in their game, and it was marked like 2.5 yards short. I think that was against Wake Forest. I'm just glad I wasn't involved in that one. And the Iowa sort of fair catch signal where he's shooing everybody away, that was a game changer as far as the Iowa-Minnesota game. So unfortunately, one bad result changed about 5 games, and that was 3 of them we just mentioned.
It wouldn't be fair to our viewers, watchers, listeners, and for me not to bring up the Pac-12. They're basically, we're waiting for them to beat themselves up. As you said, USC, which looked like in a prime bounce back spot versus a Utah team, no Cam Rising, 2-loss now USC team. Thanks for playing. And we'll get into the Utah matchup this week, obviously. But what was your thoughts on USC and Utah last Saturday?
Well, Utah's just such a well-coached team, and they have really great run balance now. They brought in one of their defensive players to assist there. So they've run for 200-something yards and 300-something yards in the last 2 weeks. And that's a tough unit to stop. Their backup quarterback, who's not the backup anymore, he's starting for the whole rest of the year. I mean, he's gotten his feet wet. He's competent now. And if the defense can continue to perform at these levels, and Oregon's going to be a tough test. You don't want to put anything past Utah. On paper, they're probably not really a top even 12 or 15 team, but when they get on the field, it's a different story.
Let's stay there. Utah, rumor has it, have won like 26 in a row, haven't lost at home since COVID. Yet the true number was Oregon coming to town, 7-point favorites, now maybe down to 6.5, depending upon where you're shopping. Surprised at the opening number of Oregon -7, number one. Number two, what is your number, and what is your thoughts with the Ducks versus Utah at prime time at night? Big win for Utah at USC. Can they keep that level up there for the Ducks and Bo Nix coming into town tomorrow?
Absolutely a fascinating game, and I can make a case for both sides. As far as a number, I would have set it closer to 4. I really, according to my power numbers, Utah has earned the respect to be rated higher. They got an extra couple bonus points for beating USC. In a situation was supposed to be a bounce back situation for USC, but Utah handled it well. So I don't have the line up to 7. I do, even though Utah's running game, I just mentioned how many yards they've been running. According to my rushing number, my metric number, Oregon still gets the edge there because they're a very tough team to stop. They have such tremendous run pass balance. One of the best in the nation at that particular avenue. And whereas Utah doesn't have that same run pass balance. Visitors fared fairly well in this series, so that's another perk for Oregon. But when you have Utah as a dog, especially a home dog, to go against that, you're really, that's the definition of gambling, because they are so good as a home dog. I would, despite the data, have to lean with Utah in this game. I think the 7 was a little high. I wouldn't be surprised at a Utah win, but on paper, again, it looks like Oregon is the more complete team. But it's going to be a fascinating game.
Geez, and if the Ducks do lose, if they happen to lose here, then you'd have a 2-loss USC team and a 2-loss Oregon team, and the Pac-12 would slowly be crumbling. Meaning, there's Washington, who sleptwalk not too long ago after the Oregon win, still sitting there undefeated. But as you and I both know, we've been talking about that Oregon State team. What's your thoughts on Oregon State this weekend?
Scary. This Arizona team is for real. It's scary. I made the line 1.5, 2.5, right in there. So it opened 4 and even more than 4 at some places, which I thought was unreasonable. Do I think Oregon State could win? I mean, they are favored. Certainly they can win, but Arizona is, I would probably give Arizona like 49% chance to win in this particular game. I would like the points. Ideally, for somebody who went to school at Oregon State, I would like Oregon State to win. And if Arizona covers, that'll make a lot of people happy. That's fine. It's an important game for Oregon State because they control their own destiny right now in terms of getting to the title game in the last year of the Pac-12, because they still have Washington left on their schedule and they still have Oregon left on their schedule. But I see this as a real toss-up game. Both teams are off rest, and Arizona's defense is better than people think.
And what Arizona has done in the last handful of weeks is just absolutely amazing. I go back the last couple of years, and they've been, excuse my French here, like a dumpster fire. And can I take you back to August and your notes and to where they are today? Because I can honestly say I didn't see this coming. Did you see this coming at all, Ron, before the season started?
With Arizona, let me see what their projected numbers are. I've got all these team sheets, so they're here for a reason. Okay, so with Arizona, they lost 4 people they had to rebuild their entire defensive line. So I had them 5 yards a carry preseason. 5.75 was their yards per carry adjusted for sacks in 2022. So I was still high at 5. They're at 3.3 right now. So no, I didn't see that coming.
All right, so at least I know I wasn't going crazy there. I'm going to go before we get a couple more NCAA questions for you. I love talking college football with you. The other, I like to say, public trendy dog, Oklahoma travels to Kansas. The true number I had was 10. There's only one way that number could go down. I think it's 8.5, 9, depends upon where you shop. It might be even a little lower. Oklahoma got caught peeking last week. The reason I know is we had the Oklahoma team total over against UCF last Saturday. First 3 drives, missed field goal, touchdown, missed field goal. So I knew I was in trouble right away, but was a 2-point conversion away from UCF tying that at 31, potentially going to overtime. Now they traveled to Kansas. Everyone likes Kansas and the points here, even here in potential upset. Thoughts on this game and obviously which Oklahoma team shows up in Kansas on Saturday?
Very similar game for the Oklahoma defense this week. UCF is a pronounced running team, and that's why I thought the spread was too high last week. Kansas is a pronounced running team, and I think they're going to expose Oklahoma via the ground. My numbers, my power numbers show this game at 8.5. They show Kansas with the ability to control their side of the ball on the ground. But Oklahoma has a tremendous series history playing at Kansas. Even though there's new coaching staffs involved, especially on Oklahoma's side, they haven't been there. there's a certain comfort level when you've gone to that stadium and you've won so many times. It's a stay away game for me. I expect Kansas to put up points on the board, but I also expect Oklahoma to be able to match them.
Last college game I'll talk about, not in the swamp, in Jacksonville, the biggest cocktail party ever, whatever you want to say. Georgia, undefeated, two-time national champs without Brock Bowers, their star tight end. Face a Florida Gator team, opening number of 14.5, and I'll backtrack. A Georgia Bulldog team that was kind of just playing grab ass all year, just winning and not covering until Kentucky came in, and they were 14.5-point favorites as well, and the real Georgia team stood up. Now 14.5 in a neutral spot. The only fishy thing to me is I looked at some money line numbers here, and they looked a little off to me at circa, meaning are the sharps actually thinking that Georgia has a shot to win here, or is this maybe Florida, or is this a Florida grab the 14.5 and hope and pray? Do we see the real Georgia team here this week?
I think we saw the real Georgia team a couple weeks ago when they dismantled one of their opponents, can't remember who, and their defensive numbers, Kentucky, thanks. Their defensive numbers are decent. I mean, more than decent, but only decent for Georgia, not up to the unbelievable standards of the previous two national championship years when they graduated so many to the NFL. This is a tricky game because you can't do anything based on series history. The numbers, the metrics that I have point this as no a play as there could ever be. I think this is a variation of a circle the wagons kind of play because Brock Bowers is out for Georgia. And when you see key players out, especially offensively, usually quarterbacks, but Brock Bowers is their lethal weapon offensively, you usually see the defense rise to the occasion because they know they're missing one of their offensive weapons. Therefore, I was a little surprised to see roughly around 49 as the over-under total, but it tells me something. I think we're going to see more defense in this game than we're used to. I think Georgia wins, but it might be a struggle. I don't have a good opinion on this game. Florida has some offensive firepower, but like I said, I think we're going to see more of a defensive game, maybe than people think.
NFL, I have to go 45 minutes down the road, a shocker in Gillette where the 8.5-point favorites come to New England. And we had talked last Friday of how poor the Patriots had been playing, but how poor they had been playing in the first and second quarters, yet they get out to a 10-0 lead. Buffalo rallies the troops, but Mac Jones takes the Patriots down on the final drive for the win. Thoughts on the Patriots and thoughts on what the hell happened to Buffalo last Sunday?
I think the Patriots figured out that if you don't turn the ball over, you could actually win some games. And if you actually start faster, you could win some games. They also got not lucky, but they caught Buffalo with one key member of the defensive line, linebacker Matt Milano for sure, and secondary Tre'Davious White, and they were all missing. So Buffalo's not at all the same defensive team that we're used to in the last couple of years, and New England was able to take advantage of it. Probably the biggest key to New England's resurgence is that I now realize Bill Belichick must listen to me because I ranted like crazy on what's wrong with New England, and Bill said, Ron, forget about it. You don't know your stuff. We're going to win this week. So he turned the tables on me. Not that I won. I mean, I was supposed to play New England, but I left the game alone. I had ranted on them so much. I just left it alone. But again, turnovers. I'm not used to seeing so many turnovers and so many missed field goals for New England. They cleaned some stuff up. And if that continues, they could be competitive in the rest of the year. They can be competitive. Not sure if they will, but they can.
We'll switch over to primetime Kirk Cousins. Everyone loves to bash him. No Justin Jefferson. A perfect get-well spot for San Francisco coming off their upset loss, their first loss of the year, the week prior. And wouldn't you know, Kirk Cousins, Jordan Addison and company find a way to beat now 2-loss San Francisco 49ers. More shocked on the 49ers losing 2 in a row, or more shocked that Jordan Addison, I'm not comparing him, by the way, to Justin Jefferson, but they sure drafted someone where if they're going to keep the 2 stars, they got an amazing 1-2 punch. And now the resurgent Minnesota Vikings with another win under their belt.
Yeah, Jordan Addison, I expected to have a good year this year because he immediately slotted into the number 2 spot and would get some looks without Jefferson in there. And then was I surprised against San Francisco? No, San Francisco was really beat up. Drew Greenlaw was playing at less than 100%. He had missed the game before. And of course, offensively, they missed Deebo Samuel. McCaffrey was all guts and ability. I mean, he's a great player, but they missed Trent Williams as well. This was a beat-up San Francisco team, and I fully expected that Minnesota not necessarily would win. I thought San Francisco would still win, but 7 points was way too much, given the fact that Minnesota was rested and San Francisco, didn't they come off a Monday night game? Whatever the situation, it was a bad situation for them. So Minnesota now is in the playoff picture. Kirk Cousins has thrown for over 300 yards in many a Monday night game. His defense has let him down in prime time. Hopefully that narrative is all over. The only thing I was surprised at, even without Deebo Samuel, is that Minnesota was a little better than I thought defensively coming in. I thought Minnesota would have a few more holes. But not surprised at that particular game and not surprised at Addison's contribution.
Let's stay in San Francisco now. A 2-loss San Francisco team hosting a Cincinnati Bengals team that is coming off a bye. So Joe Burrow should be a little healthier. Jamar Chase, obviously, a little healthier. Hopefully, maybe T. Higgins is finally healthy. Facing a San Francisco 49er team, again, assuming without Trent Williams, without Deebo Samuel, and biggest, of course, no Brock Purdy this Sunday in concussion protocol. A number that was 5.5. Sam Darnold, now the starting quarterback, down to 3.5. Thoughts on Cincinnati, San Francisco this weekend?
Terrible scheduling situational spot again for San Francisco. Remember, at the beginning of the year, the NFL did them no favors. Minus 24 rest differential compared to their opponents. And here we go again. Who needed the bye more than Cincinnati? I mean, you have Joe Mixon is their only running back. You need him to have fresh legs because he's going to wear down. He's not a great running back, but he's going to be force-fed that ball 15, 20 times a game. So you need him healthy. He gets the bye week. The youngsters in the secondary and on the defensive line get the bye week. Joe Burrow gets the bye week. You couldn't ask for anything more. And now Deebo's out again. 14 days Cincinnati. San Francisco doesn't get as much time. To me, now I got some pushback on this. How good is Cincinnati? That's what we're going to find out because Burrow hasn't been stretching the field so far. I'm of the opinion that we're buying low on Cincinnati right now, that they're not as good as Baltimore, not close right now to Baltimore, but they are a playoff worthy team. Maybe I'll be wrong this week, but the circumstances, the situation couldn't be better for Cincinnati to catch a San Francisco team that doesn't have a lot of time to reassess the, what's going on with their roster. And I'll add one thing about Sam Darnold. I don't think there's a big difference, if any difference, between Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy. I put out a poll that way, and it seems to be the results of that poll are somewhere between 1 and 3 points that he's a difference. The big thing is Sam Darnold is probably more turnover prone, but Sam Darnold can throw any pass that he wants to throw as well, and he has a decent, not spectacular completion percentage. So we'll see what happens. That's not the reason why I would favor Cincinnati in this game, but Darnold has to stay turnover free.
And I liked what I saw in the preseason with Sam Darnold. All the reports were real good, and I think that made it a lot easier for the 49ers to move off of Trey Lance and hold on to Darnold. So it's going to be definitely interesting there. I talked to you backstage, and I'm not here to pump my chest up. We were on record in August, to grab some MVP money on Lamar. The thought process was, A, he's healthy again. B, he's paid. And C, the addition of Zay Flowers, the addition of OBJ and their defense, of course. I liked where they were positioned. I thought social media and people that didn't watch the games were giving him a bum rap the last handful of weeks, saying that he was throwing the ball horrifically, which in tune, it was the drops from the tight end. It was the drops from the wide receiver as well. He put it all together against a Detroit Lion team that only had one loss, that was undefeated on the road. And I think at halftime was 28 or 35 nothing. Thoughts on Lamar, thoughts on the Ravens, and an assessment of the true Lions. Did we see the true Lions, or was just one of those weekends?
I think the Lions got put in their place a little bit, got humbled, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for the Lions to do that. They now can re-slot themselves. They were ascending. They had reached my top 5 for the first time, in 60 years or so, before I even started doing this. So I think they got re-slotted properly now. They're really not up to Kansas City or Baltimore or San Francisco's level right now. But they're good. And it was just one of those days. And if you could tell me that Lamar Jackson can stay healthy for 17 games, then certainly Baltimore is one of the 3 favorites to make it to the Super Bowl, because I think this team is loaded. They got Raquan Smith in the middle of last season. He stabilized that linebacker core. They're still a little young and banged up in the secondary. Obviously, they lost Dobbins at running back. There's still some missing pieces, but like you said, the wide receiver core has been rebuilt, and they're really adapting to Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator. And if that marriage continues to be good and they continue to grow, then this team is not only going to be feared on the ground, but they could be feared in the air too.
The NFL trade deadline is on Halloween, October 31st, and the name Derrick Henry has been floated out there. I talked to you backstage, and I said it last week. I'll say it again. If it was me and I was the GM of the Ravens, I would have been on the phone with Washington. Chase Young and Sweat are available, but I'm going to ask you live here in front of a lot of people watching and listening right now, Ron. You are the GM of the Ravens, and you got an opportunity to get either Sweat, Chase Young, or Derrick Henry. Which one would you take?
Those are good choices. Derrick Henry would change the scheme a little bit. I don't know if they want to be busy changing schemes right now. I would probably pick, it's tough. The best marker of ability is availability. I know I'm butchering that statement a little bit. And the other 2 guys, Sweat has missed some time and Chase Young has missed a lot of time. So I'd probably pick Sweat over Chase Young. I'd be scared about people who have had multiple injuries, but I wouldn't be opposed to getting somebody like that, or if somebody in the secondary is available. We just saw Tennessee, Philadelphia, as usual, Howie Roseman work a trade with Tennessee for Tennessee's very best defensive back. If Baltimore gets somebody like that, Kevin Baird, that would be even more telling for me.
We got a few minutes here before we shift it over to you. Your top 5, My assumption is, just off the top of my head, that the Chiefs have now moved to the number one spot in the NFL rankings. And then off the top of my head, I know you've been a little bullish on the Eagles. The Eagles beat the Dolphins on Sunday night. It was a good game. Don't get me wrong. Again, I don't play the ref card. We know that you can call a penalty on every play in the NFL, but I find it hard that the Dolphins were flagged 10 times and the Eagles not one there. So I would say Chiefs, maybe Eagles. Now the Niners have a couple losses. The Dolphins have a couple losses. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to say Chiefs, Eagles, and then I want to hear where your top five is.
Well, power ratings are circled when there's injuries. So if everybody gets back healthy, I'm not talking about the guys that are gone for 4 weeks or 8 weeks, but I still have San Francisco a half point better than everybody else, assuming Deebo Samuel plays, Trent Williams plays, Drew Greenlaw gets healthy, Fred Warner was banged up. It's asking a lot in the NFL to stay healthy, but they're there. I mean, Kansas City would be next, and Baltimore has entered the top 5. Philadelphia has entered the top 5. I did mention Kansas City. Is that the 5 that I have? Buffalo's still kind of there, surprisingly for me, because I don't think like I said, they're short long-term people for defense, but they still are hanging around. But Jeff, there's just no elite team right now in the NFL. And we saw these teams get knocked off. We saw a lot of underdogs win last week. We may not see the same thing this week because of the matchups, but everybody's vulnerable this year.
I want to ask you this, and the reason is because I get a lot of DMs and emails during the week. Why don't you ask Ron if he has any plays in college or the NFL? And I know you do a lot of work with Wager Talk in the beginning of the week, writing on Monday and Tuesday. I know you do some podcasts, obviously, with Vegas Chris and a few others. So I'm just going to throw out this. Is there any college or NFL plays that you might want to share to all the viewers and listeners here on Friday?
Okay, well, I may have mentioned this to you. I'm pretty sure I did, and I mentioned this in a number of places last week. I was fascinated by that Clemson Miami of Florida game. Not because I knew who was going to win that game. It's because I couldn't wait to see who would lose that game. I was kind of hoping that it would go to overtime, and I think I went to triple. I got all my wishes on that game. So my radar came out. I took Clemson at the 10.5 opener to North Carolina State with the 10.5 points. I think they're roughly 9.5 right now. Maybe there's still a straight 10. If you want one of my plays for the college, NC State would be it.
And do you have any in the NFL? One for the NFL?
Well, I encourage people to read my articles and not only to listen to.
I do every week. Week.
And thank you. And then Chris and we brainstorm live. It's us kind of feeding off each other. And then what we're doing here, sometimes we come up with something here as well. But anybody read between the lines knew that I would like Cincinnati at the 6.5 when that came out. And so Cincinnati is my play for the NFL as well. Houston's now a 3.5 point favorite. It's kind of an interesting reset for both new coaches because even though Frank Wright's not a new coach, he's new with this personnel, and they're going to have a new offensive coordinator or not a new offensive coordinator, but he's going to allow his offensive coordinator to actually call the plays. So we're going to see some scheme changes in Carolina-Houston. I'm fascinated by that game. I think with the line moving to 3.5, you might want to pencil that in as something interesting as well.
Before I give you that 10-yard button hook to wrap up the week here with a couple closing thoughts, the Chiefs, it's the same every week. It's next man up. Patrick Mahomes' first quarter, 8 for 8, 7 different wide receivers. Travis Kelsey getting healthier. Pacheco really starting to establish himself. It looks like Racey Rice is trending upwards. They added McCole Hardman midweek there. Very familiar, obviously, with the system. Had a good punt return and a nice first down catch. They traveled to Denver this week. And just like 2 weeks ago when Philly and the 49ers were undefeated, they lose. Just like last week when the Niners lose and the Bills lose. This number smells in regards to almost like a trap. They played a couple weeks ago on Thursday night to that 19-9, kind of a ho-hum Thursday night game that the Chiefs were in total command. Do I smell a rat here? KC almost do. They've put 6 wins in a row together. Is there a potential trap game here, or is it just business as usual for the Chiefs here?
Vegas hopes it's a trap game for sure because they're heavily teased. And I know people are in love with teases, but and of course, Kansas City has beaten Denver 15, 16 times in a row. So you have that in there, but it is a little bit tricky. Rashee Rice is emerging. That's absolutely true. I love the fit to Kansas City. Lost in the shuffle, though, is Nick Bolton, one of the fastest linebackers in the league, is going to miss 2 months. And his ability to meet Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson sprints out and say, Russell, you're not getting away with this, is going to be missed. If Denver stays out of their own way, this is a tricky game. It's not a game on my radar. If I had to pick a side, I would pick Denver plus the over 7 points. I think you can get 7.5. I opened at 8. I think it's a little bit of a tricky game, but you have to count on the fact that Denver's going to stay out of their own way. But the loss of Nick Bolton shouldn't be understated.
Well, as always, we love to end our session at the end of the week with a nice little 10-yard button hook to you where you can give all the watch listeners and everyone here a couple closing thoughts to end our week.
I'm going to play crystal ball, Ron's crystal ball, that you don't have to hold me to it because it'll probably be wrong. But if I'm seeding everybody in the AFC and NFC right now, I'm predicting Kansas City number 1 seed, Baltimore number 2 seed, Jacksonville number 3 seed, all the way down Buffalo, Super Bowl contender, Buffalo, Miami winner, 4 seed, Buffalo, Miami loser, 5th seed. We'll see what happens with Cincy. Their season win total remains at 8.5. I took some 8.5, knowing that they might steal a win against San Francisco, given the circumstances. I have Cincinnati as the 6th seed. And then if you have a hat and you want to throw 4 teams in as the 7th seed, let's throw them in. Cleveland, the Jets, Pittsburgh, even the Chargers would be 7, 8, 9, 10 in that order. NFC, I still think Dallas will win. At this time, Ron's crystal ball says San Francisco number 1 seed. Dallas, Philly winner of that division, number 2 seed. The Lions, a very clear number 3 seed. Atlanta or somebody else who can string more than 1 game in a row in the NFC South, probably a little bit of Atlanta right now, but they get in their own way as the 4 seed. Dallas, Philly loser is the 5th seed. Seattle is the 6th seed, and I've moved up to Minnesota as the 7th seed. One last thought.
That is
we got
awesome.
The trading deadline.
I was trying to play.
Oh, go.
Yes. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to go, if you want to comment on that, if you see anything wrong on that or.
No, I was trying to play along with you. And then when I was asking you your top 5 earlier, of course, here I am pumping up the Ravens. And of course, I'm like, duh, why don't I have the Ravens in there? And what I really like is the fact that, again, due to injury, due to circumstances, again, sometimes 2 losses right now is best. The Niners aren't at 100%. We've seen them at 100%. We know how good of a team they are. So again, the eyes will tell you and the social media and the public will tell you, what have you done for me lately versus being bullish on the Niners, being bullish on the Bills, who we didn't even talk about. Nice bounce back victory. Shakir comes into, I guess, I don't want to say evolving, but was good if you had to play him in fantasy. I'm very disappointed, and I'll save this for another show. I don't know what the Bills are doing with the Lap Murray and James Cook split. I know just from what I can get from James Cook. I know he's a good back. I know he can evolve into a better back, but I don't know what the love affair for Lap Murray is. But that will be for next week. And your second comment that you had to close tonight?
Yeah, speaking of Buffalo, I think in terms of the trading deadline, buyers and sellers, I think it's going to be a fascinating next 4 days, especially right after the Sunday games up to the Tuesday deadline. I think Buffalo should and probably will pick up a defensive player from one of the sellers. I think Buffalo will be a buyer. You might even see Kansas City a buyer. You might even see San Francisco a buyer. All these teams that know they need one more player to shore up their defense. I think that's what they're going to be looking at. I'll be interested to see whether your New England team becomes a seller. This is a game that they may lose against Miami. They're big underdogs. Will New England be a seller in getting rid of some of their high salary guys and continue the rebuild? Tennessee, Denver for sure will be sellers. Carolina might be a seller because of draft picks. Arizona might be a seller. Not Kyler Murray, but they may be a seller in other ways. One last point, if I may, fascinating fact, gone and forgotten, Carson Wentz is not on an NFL roster, and we've had 10 quarterback injuries. Just a comment, nothing positive or negative, just a comment.
Wow. The forgotten man, holy cow. And you go back to the Super Bowl, you go back to, again, teams that just say thanks, but no thanks. And they knew they had their guy with Jalen Hurts. It almost reminds me of the Chiefs, the year they moved up and they drafted Patrick Mahomes, and then they bring him into the office and Alex Smith right next to him, and Andy hands Patrick the clipboard and says, that gentleman right there is our starting quarterback next year. He is your mentor. You'll be our starting quarterback the following year, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Andy Reid was ahead of did what other coaches his age didn't do. He changed his stripes and he went for a different kind of quarterback than Alex Smith was. Nothing wrong with Alex Smith, but Kansas City didn't want to make the playoffs. They wanted to win it all. And that's what they got with Mahomes.
Another amazing week, and another week that I held you a little overtime. We can't thank you enough. I could talk for hours and hours. And as you said earlier today, we're already to week 8. We're almost at the official halfway point of the NFL. Ron, I remember not too long ago, being a guest on your show as you were wrapping up Philly. And so I'm already projecting, am I going to be on the Patriots? Am I going to be on Philly again this year? And we're not even halfway through the NFL season yet.
Yeah.
So
people always ask me about the draft. No, they always ask me about the draft because I've done 40 of them or so on. What do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? And I always tell them, there's time for that later. Enjoy the season. I'm not one of those guys that thinks about the draft during the season.
Ron, the scroll-up's been going. I know they can follow you on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it today, at Ron A Sports. But I'd like to have you tell them where to find your work Mondays and Tuesdays, your podcast. Obviously, I read your work, and I felt guilty. It will be the last time asking for a play or two where I can read between the tea leaves, and I already kind of knew where you were going.
Yeah, I'm not as transparent with the plays because I feel some of the shows are more about the process. That's what Chris and I do on our Tuesday show. We talk about the process on this show. I write articles that bring up nuggets that if they knew about what happens in week 2 of the quartile, where quartile number 2, week 5, they could have read that information about coaching information. I just try to make, as best as I can put it, the listener, the viewer, the reader more educated rather than worrying about giving picks out. And I just like brainstorming with different people. Got a chance to do that with another very strong person in the field, Matt Landis, last night at halftime of the game between Tampa and Buffalo. But I will enjoy the off season when it comes. But right now, it's fun to talk about football with you and everybody. It's right in my pinned tweet. You can see where I'm at every day of the week.
The one and only Ron Marmalefsky at Ron A Sports. Go follow him. Go check out his work. He's amazing. We're blessed and honored to have him here every Friday. So that's a wrap here at ECSI and the ECSI studios for this week. We will be live at BC tomorrow at 12 noon kickoff. BC and UConn. Be back at the studio later that night, and of course tomorrow, Sunday morning, most likely with JB, the Las Vegas Express scoreboard live in Vegas on the radio, AM and FM at 9 a.m. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Ron at Ron A Sports, we wish everyone an amazing Friday. Remember, it's payday, people. Tread lightly. Try to be a contrarian. Fade the public if you can. And we'll see you soon.